All right, 6 o'clock all. Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting for April 13th, 2020, Papillion La Vista Community Schools. To begin our meeting, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll begin with roll call, please.
Present.
Here.
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 Thank you. To begin the meeting, I'll draw your attention to two items. The first is our open meetings law are posted at our entrance, or you can also go online to see them at the Secretary of State website. Also, during this COVID crisis, if you will, we are observing an executive order per the directive of the governor, Executive Order 20-03, which essentially gives us a limited waiver to broadcast on today's school board meeting by way of social media, and in this case, we're going Facebook Live. So if you have any comments or questions, you can comment on Facebook, and we'll do our best to comment on those items as we go throughout the meeting. First item up is Section 2, Part A, public comments on items not in the agenda. Do we have any public comments? Ms. Simon?
No comments yet.
Okay. Next up, item B would be the superintendent's report. Dr. Rickley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brassfield, members of the board. This is our second consecutive Facebook Live meeting with the Board of Education. So thank you again for board members for being so flexible and being here this evening. And for those of you that are joining us via social media, thank you for joining us. We will continue to keep our social media presence up, and you can continue to watch as questions get asked in real time. It's been a busy time in the district, as you might imagine. Ms. Iman will be talking later on in the broadcast about the different conversations and the preparations that we've been doing as a district to carry out our teaching and learning plan and to provide our meals, for example. So I don't want to go into too much of that just yet, but we are continuing our conversations with both superintendent groups as well as state and educational leaders in Lincoln. In fact, we met with Governor Ricketts via conference call just this afternoon. Not a lot of new information from the governor's mansion. I think Governor Ricketts is doing a really good job continuing to communicate with the schools. All of the statistics that he shared with us for the last several weeks have remained consistent. They believe that cases in Nebraska, COVID-19 cases, will peak either later this month or in early May. School is closed for the remainder of the year across the state, of course. So I think the next step that the governor will tackle is when does Nebraska as a state start to loosen up on some of the social distancing guidelines. So we'll watch the governor for guidance there. Also wanted to thank the board and our community for a really good Facebook Live event last Thursday. It's our third Facebook Live event in the last several weeks, and I believe this was the best attended in terms of the viewership. At its peak, I believe we had over 920 viewers and lots of really good questions. Most of the content was around the teaching and learning plan. Ms. Siri did a wonderful job of not only outlining the phase 2, which started this week, but also fielding questions from our parents and our students and staff. So really good opportunity to interact with our community. We'll continue to do those events as long as the demand is there, and I suspect it will be for a while. Also wanted to commend Ms. Siri and her team for our Advanced Ed Cognia external accreditation visit. As you'll recall, we had a team come in the first week in March, so it's been about 5-6 weeks now. And as part of that external accreditation process, the team produces a report, basically summarizing their findings. Ms. Siri will be talking about that a little bit later on the board agenda, but the results from that visit were absolutely outstanding. Some of the information in the report is anecdotal, but much of it is quantifiable, and it's tied to classroom observations, it's tied to interviews, it's tied to conversations that they had with the board member and administration, for example. So when you look at the contents of the report, I think you're going to be very proud. Anytime we can have an outside group come in and rate us, so to speak, I think that's a really, really great opportunity for the organization to learn and to get even better. So some really exciting results from our external accreditation visit. Also wanted to share we're continuing conversations with groups. We had at least 5 or 6 Zoom meetings with elementary principals, secondary principals, teachers at all 3 grade spans, elementary, middle school, and high school, and we also met with district secretaries last week. So the questions are what you would expect, everything from what do we expect next fall with regard to school to will we continue to pay our classified staff. So lots of good conversations with our staff and hopefully keeping them in the loop as well. One of the big questions we continue to get, as the board is aware, is commencement and honors night. We're starting to firm up our plans. We had a conversation with both Mr. Kleina at Monarch and Mr. Johnson at Titan late last week. We know the date. It is Sunday, May 10th, which was the original date slated for commencement. We know that it will be done virtually, at least in phase 1 of the commencement process, and we really want to make it a classy, meaningful activity. So Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kleina had some really great ideas. We also met with some students to get some ideas and some feedback from our students. And in case the directed health measures from our governor do get lifted, we do have a plan B for commencement as well. So besides the May 10th, which is a for sure, and it will be virtual, we also have some nights picked out at Baxter Arena in early August. We don't have the exact date finalized yet, but we are working with Baxter Arena so that if the directed health measure is lifted and we could have larger group gatherings, that way we have an option for our graduates and our families. And lastly, we had a really, really special event here at our central office today. We've been working with CHI Midlands. Ann Allen from their foundation had reached out to me probably 2 weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about are there things that we as a school district can do to support our frontline medical providers, those people that are truly working in the trenches to protect all of us. And one of the things that we found out through our conversation was there's an acute shortage of sanitizing wipes, hand gel, and safety goggles. And we talked through a little bit about the district stores of those 3 specific items. And Dr. Settle's team, Becky Myers and Trent Steele in particular, sent out a request across the district asking principals, do you have any that you could spare, safety goggles, wipes, gel? And the response was absolutely incredible. I think we had well over 700 goggles alone. And they're not fancy goggles. They're the type of goggles you'd see in an industrial tech or a STEM classroom, for example. But we packaged those up, and we were able to deliver those this afternoon to CHI. So we're really doing some nice things to support those people that are sacrificing so much to protect all of us. In fact, I think a couple of news stations maybe picked up on that. And with that, Mr. Brassfield, I would conclude my superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rickley. Next up on our agenda, Section 2, Item D would be, or Item C, excuse me, would be board comments.
I would like to compliment the central office. As always, the leadership comes from the top, and the decisions that you people have. The decisions that you people have made here in the central office has had a direct impact on having a positive outlook on what's happening to us right now with our COVID-19. And I can't say enough good words to say about how Ms. Iman, Katie Settles, and Shireen have all pitched in and have done a terrific job. And I know it comes from the top, so I am very proud and that I'm part of this organization.
Thank you, Dr. Tafoya. While liaison lunches are on hold, I was privy to the neighborhood elementary school parade this week. It came by my house. The neighborhood I live in is Bell Elementary School, so I was able to. I didn't really know what was going on at first because I'm not on some of the feeds because my kids don't go there anymore. But then when I saw it going around, I went out to the corner and was able to see the staff coming through, and the kids were so excited to see their teachers. I saw Mrs. Johnson, Miss Miller, Miss there go through just some of our teachers and staff, and it was really just a first-class affair. And My wife is a teacher, and those kids really light up when they see their teacher, even for just a minute. And so it does a lot for our kids. And so I was very, very pleased to see that. But that was an excellent event, and also a nice job on all of the Facebook Live events we've had. We had the one immediately after the last board meeting, so that one went very well. People were still in the discovery phase of what was going on with this pandemic. And so thank you very much. And Dr. Tafoya, thanks for your comments this evening. That was just excellent. Any other board comments this evening?
No, I'd just like to follow up with that, as well as we had Patriot Elementary did right after our board meeting, I think the next day. They were one of the first schools to go, and as Mr. Brassfield said, the kids light up. It gave my kids their art project for the day to go down and make some posters, and it was so early on, almost 3 weeks ago now, that it was great to see people emerge from their homes and obviously in their driveways, and to get them out and to be able to wave at neighbors and see folks and really light up the kids. It made a big difference. And to kind of echo Dr. Tafoya's comments as well, credit to all the staff to see the adaptability of the ever-changing landscape of this COVID-19 and the way that they've had to shift gears almost on a daily basis up to now phase 2 of the learning plan. It's been a struggle for us parents as well to adapt, and so a huge thank you for almost information overload to giving us tools and packets and educational websites and things to do to try to figure out our own schedule and be supported. The teachers have been phenomenal, especially the two that I deal directly with. The interaction, especially with phase 2 today, very, very seamless. I thought it gave a lot more structure. I think the multiple interactions during the week now with their teacher just gives them a sense of normalcy and structure again that is going to be needed for the next few weeks. It was less of a challenge for me and my wife today to get the kids to sit down and actually, here's the plan, and they've got the calendar, they got a schedule. So a big thank you to all the staff. Figuring out how to do Zoom classes and teach online in a matter of a couple of weeks to run like some well-oiled, higher ed folks that do this professionally. Thank you. Your continued work is grateful by us on the board and us parents that are trying to figure out the new norm. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lotus. Any other board comments at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move into next section 3, action items. First item up is item A, which is our action items by consent.
I'll make a motion to approve the items for.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I did miss. Excuse me 1 second. I did miss the committee reports. Buildings and grounds.
Yes, we did have a meeting, and some of those items are in the action items tonight. Other items will be discussed when we can have a full public forum. So,
thank you, Mr. Zerker. Human Resources and Student Services.
We did meet via Zoom since the last meeting. Items are on tonight's agenda and will be on future agendas as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lotus. Curriculum and Americanism.
We have not met. We have not met.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. All right, now we're on section 3, action items. First up would be entertain a motion for action items by consent.
And I will make a motion to approve the items in the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I've got a motion by Ms. Witt and a second by Mr. Zerker. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Next up would be item B, which is board meeting minutes for March 23rd, 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve the board meeting minutes of March 23rd, 2020.
I will second.
I have a motion by Ms. Fisher and a second by Mr. Relotis. Roll call, please. Yes.
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 Thank you very much. Next up will be item C, general obligation bonds 2020. Mr. Lewis, I do believe you're up, sir.
Yes, this is the continuation of the bond issue for some additional dollars to continue our construction projects that we have going within the district. And I'm going to have Scott King come up and explain this information for you with regards to the resolution that you have before you in the packet. So. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Keene, Piper Sandler. As Doug mentioned, this is a resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $52.5 million, not to exceed $38 million of which would be related to the new money construction projects that are going on. The other $14.5 million is related to the possible refunding of the district's outstanding Series 2012 and 2013 bonds. When I was here at the last board meeting, the market was in complete disarray, and in that 3-week period, we've really had things calm down quite a lot. We're still not back to where we were in early February, mid-February, but we've seen a dramatic improvement. We had 3 very strong days at the tail end of last week, and everyone's hope was that it would carry over to today's market, and it did. So we're in good shape. Doug and I held a conference call with the representative from Moody's last Monday, and it went very, very well. He was very complimentary. Doug did a very nice job. We're in shape to get that rating this week, and with any luck, we hope to be able to go to market next week, pending the board's approval, obviously, of the resolution tonight. At this point, we are not looking at proceeding with the refunding portion of the financing. We will likely do that at a later date, but at this point, the interest rates have not, especially on the short end, where all those bonds are, haven't come back down enough to justify proceeding with the refunding. So at this point, it's looking like the only thing that we'll be doing will be approximately $33 million of a new money financing to get the district through the rest of this year and partway into 2021 with its construction program. Right now, interest rates are are in the area of providing a true interest cost of somewhere between 2.45 and 2.75%. So again, very low interest rates, very favorable time to be borrowing for a 20-year financing of a good credit quality financing like yours. But the 2 refunding issues, the 2012 bonds, their present value savings range between $216. This is the stuff that's in bold print on my cover page. $216,000 to $286,000, which translates into about 3.5 to a little over 4.5% present value savings. That's not strong enough to pull the trigger yet. On the 2013 issue, those savings present value range between $275,000 and $435,000, which is more like 3.5 to 5.5%. So a little bit better savings, but still a wide enough range there, and still a little too much uncertainty as to where those interest rates could end up being, that it's not worth committing the district to spending the money to get the bonds rated before we're comfortable pulling the trigger on doing those refundings. So we're not wanting to commit you to spending the money if it's unlikely that we'll end up doing the refundings. So that's the reason that we're separating that one out. The resolution is really almost identical to what you have seen in the past. The true interest cost maximum that's allowed in the resolution is 5%. As I said, we're right now in today's market somewhere in the 2.5 to 2.75% range. So we have plenty of room under that provision. And the final maturity can be no later than December of 2040. So again, a 20-year financing, which is what the district has traditionally done with your new money construction financings. The 2 other items that I note at the bottom of this summary page, as I mentioned last time I was here, We wanted to bring in the possibility of issuing taxable bonds for the district because we weren't sure whether the tax-exempt market or the taxable market would be the first to recover. As it turns out, the tax-exempt market has recovered much more quickly than the taxable market has. So we won't even be looking at that as an option. We'll be doing traditional tax-exempt bonds as you have in the past. But we've also added a COVID-19 provision in the bond purchase agreement. Bondholders, we've seen, as you know, the market has just been all over the place in terms of interest rates running up really large amounts in a very short period of time. And consequently, we have seen buyers backing out of financings just because interest rates have gone up so much, and they have in turn panicked about investing their money and have pulled out of financings. So we need to have a provision in the bond purchase agreement that allows, if we have a material drop in buyers who just walk away before settlement because interest rates have run up dramatically and we don't have the ability to sell them at those rates, a provision that would allow us to step away from the financing. We don't expect that to happen. We think things are calming down enough that we aren't going to have to worry about that at all. But that is about the only other change to the documents than what the district has seen in all of their earlier financings. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Just a real quick question. I want to bring this up only because we have a lot more folks joining us live than might normally be here and be able to ask these questions. On the refunding on that vernacular, could you just clarify what that is for our folks? Because that's not quite what we think of as a refund.
Sure.
Could you just clarify that a little bit for our folks at home?
Good point. I think we use the word refunding just because it's easier to say than refinancing.
Correct.
But you're absolutely right. It is a refinancing of the outstanding bonds for interest rate savings. And we only do it if the savings greatly exceed the amount of the costs of doing that refinancing. And we aren't extending the amortization. The final maturity on the 2012 Bs, I believe, that issue only goes out for another 6 or 7 years. The 2013 issue goes out for another 8 years or so. And we're keeping those same original repayment schedules, so we're not extending, but just refunding over the same life of the issue. And again, only doing it if there are significant interest rate savings.
Thank you, Scott. I just wanted to clarify
Yes.
that. I understand but there's a lot of legal jargon in some of these contracts. We got to shorten it up a little bit for board agendas. I want to make sure we covered that.
You bet. And just very quickly, so people can understand this very easily, with the 2012 B issue, again, at today's interest rates, the annual savings, we talked about the present value savings, but the annual savings over each of those years ranges between $27,000 and $36,000 per year. On the 2013 issue, ranges between $25,000 and $38,000 per year. So they are not insignificant savings, but again, we don't want to have the district pulling the trigger if there's a risk that we won't come close to hitting our savings targets and run the risk of having the district spend more to do the refinancings than you actually receive in interest rate savings.
Scott, if I may, I really appreciate Brett's question. For those in the audience that may or may not have followed some of the district business related to this particular action item. So what the district in effect is doing, correct me if I'm wrong, is $52.5 million. $38 million of that 52.5 is related to the bond projects, that $109.9 million that our voters approved in May 2018. The balance of that 52.5 is similar to if somebody at home would be to refinance their home to get more favorable interest rates and savings. Did I capture kind of big picture?
You captured that perfectly. That's
okay.
Absolutely correct, Dr. Rickley. Yes. Thank you.
And thank you for being here, Mr. Keene. I always appreciate having your explanations.
Thank you for having me.
Any other board comments from Mr. Keene at this time?
Thanks, Scott. You've always done a great job of steering us in the right direction. The work that Mr. Lewis and you do together for this district has always been impeccable. We've saved the district a tremendous amount of money over the years when we have done our refunding. So I appreciate your explanations and the little bit of caution we're showing in not necessarily doing that at this time. But I just want to make sure, so if the motion that we have in front of us that we may be making, would still allow us to do that. If that would change in the relatively near future, that you would come back and say to us, this really is turning out to be a great time to do that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fisher. I should have mentioned that this resolution, like your prior resolutions, does authorize the president and the vice president of the board to proceed with these financings, provided they meet the parameters that are described within the resolution. So again, the tourist cost can't exceed 5%. We can't extend the amortization beyond the 2040 date. Can't issue an amount in excess of what's described here. But with this action tonight, if it turns around, if the market calms down and turns around, we'll be in a position to be able to move forward fairly quickly with a very quick renewal or update of the rating, printing of a new official statement, and with the authority of the board president or vice president, we'll be able to get to market and achieve those savings if they're available to us. So this authorization does provide for us to proceed with the refunding, even though we don't expect to do it right now, but may be doing it in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other board comments? Ms. Simon, do we have any public comments at this time? We do not. All right. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion on the general obligation and refunding bond series 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to issue general obligation bond and refunding bonds series 2020, an amount not to exceed $52,500,000.
I will second.
I've got a motion by Ms. Fisher and a second by Mr. Lotus. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lotus.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
Dr. Foyle.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Braswell.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you,
Mr.
very
Keene.
much. Thank you, Mr. Have a terrific evening.
Thank
See
you.
you soon. Stay healthy.
Okay, next up on our action items would be item D, Policy Series 3000, Business. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, these are the four policies that were brought to you at the previous board meeting. Policy 3001, General Fiscal Management and Borrowing. That policy is updated to include specifically the language Nebraska Liquid Asset Fund investments. That is where we keep our general fund, building fund, construction fund, and school lunch fund dollars in the liquid asset fund, and then that's transferred to Pinnacle Bank when we write checks. Policy 3102, board preparation of budget proposal. We just updated that for just some recent legislation that was changed with regards to that accounting funds. And then 3201, again, the changes that NDE provided for system of accounts. As you know, we redid our entire budget with the new coding system, so that language is to include that information. And then policy 3304, district funds, just is updated to clarify some language in there.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Do we have any board comments or questions at this time? Ms. Simon, do we have any public comments?
No.
All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for Policy Review 3000 series on the business and non-instructional operations.
I'll make a motion to approve updates to policy 3001, 3102, 3201, 3004, changes as presented.
I'll second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Zerker and a second by Ms. Witt. Roll call, please.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Foyle.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Braswell.
Yes.
Mr. Lotus.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Thank you. Next item would be item E, Carriage Hill addition and renovation bid. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, we opened bids April 8th at 2 p.m. We collected bids outside, and then we brought them in, and we did tape it so that if any of the vendors wanted to see the actual opening, that was available to them. The bids are for Carriage Hill Elementary. That's some new construction, some renovation. We did have 3 alternates on this bid. One is a complete re-roofing of the facility, and then there was some repair of drainage issue in the playground asphalt in the back, and the addition of some concrete in the front for students at the beginning of the day. We had 11 bids that were received by the district, so a good showing. We did have a low bid submitted by Rogge General Contractors. However, when we contacted them after the bid opening, they indicated that they had made an error in their bid, in the mechanical portion of their bid, and wanted to retract their bid. They do provide a 5% bid bond. In the past, the district has allowed contractors to withdraw their bids without penalty if it was an error in the bid calculation. So that would be our recommendation, is to allow them to withdraw their bid and without penalty. That made D.R. Anderson the low bid at $5,908,000. They had a combined alternate amount of $446,400. We did review with D.R. Anderson, and they are satisfied with their bid, so our recommendation is to accept D.R. Anderson's bid for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Do we have an estimated start date? I know things have changed a little bit with us being out of school. Does that accelerate some start dates, or?
It won't accelerate the start date just because at the beginning of the projects we'll have to meet. They'll have to kind of finalize the schedule. Then they will also have to get city permits, so that takes some time in order to do that. So their start time will probably be about the same, which is going to be probably May, before they can get all that arranged.
Sure.
Mr. Lewis, have we done business with D.R. Anderson before, and if so, have we had successful luck working with this particular firm?
D.R. Anderson is currently doing G. Stanley Hall. Very similar project, almost identical in scope.
Excellent. Any other board comments or questions at this time? Seeing none, Ms. Simon, do we have any comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the Carriage Hill addition and renovation bid.
I'll make a motion to, 1, approve the lump sum bid and authorizes and approves the construction contract with D.R. Anderson Constructors Co. for the low bid amount of $5,908,000. Wait a minute. That's not right. It is. The numbers are wrong. For $5,908,000, an alternate 1, 2, and 3 in a combined amount of $466,400 for the Carriage Hill addition and renovation project. And 2, delegates authority to and authorizes, approves, and directs the President of the Board of Education, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, or a designee for the school district to sign, execute, and deliver such construction contract, sign and approve any change orders, retain necessary professionals for assistance, pay the contract price, change order increases, and expenses related to the construction project and site preparation work, and take all other action necessary to complete any requirements or obligations under the construction project and contract.
Second.
Before I call for the roll call, I do want the record to reflect that Mr. Lotus did read that correctly. There is a typo on the dollar number figure in the award. However, it was read correctly, so we'll update that, but it was read into the record correctly. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you on that. Next item up is going to be item F, which would be employment for classified staff members during the COVID-19 closure. Mr. Lotus, Dr. Settles, this is your item.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. So I am here tonight to speak specifically about the classified staff. Before we start into that portion, just a reminder that our certified staff, which would mean teachers, principals, specialists, all continue to work as well. But per state law, they do continue to get paid even if school is not in session. That is not the case for our classified staff. However, you may recall as our discussions in the past, and I know many of you have had the opportunity to see this in action over the last couple of weeks, but our classified staff continues working very hard as well to the extent possible. I just wanted to give you kind of a quick rundown of what our classified staff is doing right now, and then a recommendation as we move forward with our classified staff. So first of all, we are having them submit any hours that they are working that is outside of the school district, since some of these things have moved to off of their normal buildings that they report to. Our custodians and our buildings and grounds are still reporting. They are busy working ahead, actually, on summer projects, knowing that there could be a point that we're not allowed to report at all, and we know that that work does need to get done at some point. Our secretaries have mostly moved to working from home, but they also have individual workspaces at their schools. So when needed, they are working in their buildings, but they are getting just their regular normal work accomplished at home, as normal can be right now. Our food service staff is still serving and prepping over 2,000 meals per week for the food program. Our paras are signing up weekly to go and help and work with food preparation as well as distribution at those food program sites. They've also volunteered making masks and things like that for people that are still working. More recently, classroom work has become available to our paras, and I know they're loving being included on things like classroom Zooms with their classes that they normally would be working with that class and teacher. And we're hoping that that continues and more work continues to be made available for paras, as we know they're very valuable helping as students are moving into phase 2 of our learning plan. We have some professional development available for them as well, and all of their regular professional development that they would have continued by and finished by the end of May is being asked to continue, and will wrap up here by the end of the semester. We also know that we may have some other professional development that we can make available to them as we prepare next year to make some changes in technology. So I guess just in summary, in the last 3 weeks, the last 2 weeks, I should say, we had a return to work agreement in place while we took a look at what came down with federal laws and what we were able to do. So the first return to work agreement went extremely well with our classified staff. We had a lot of them take advantage of that. And as I stated, many of them are continuing to find ways that they can help and work. What we know is that we have a very highly qualified classified staff who knows our schools and even more importantly knows our students. And that sort of a staff just doesn't happen without a lot of effort by them and the people around them. So we want to make sure that when this is all over, when we're able to return, that we've retained that classified staff and been able to get right back to work in serving our students in our schools when we reopen. What you have attached there is an additional return to work agreement, and that would cover time worked from April 6th through May 22nd. Basically, a couple of highlights of that agreement. It does say that they make themselves available to work and will work as called upon by their supervisors. It also states in there that in exchange for being paid, they will continue to come back and for a period of 6 months after the date of the initiation of this agreement. So that would take us through October. There is a stipulation in there. Unless agreed upon by their supervisor or human resources. We know of certain situations, for instance, somebody who is relocating with the military or someone who had already planned to retire, things like that. But what this agreement should do is keep the vast majority of our classified staff here until at least October 13th per this agreement. So our recommendation would be that we continue to have a return to work agreement in place, and that would cover for last week as well as this next 6 weeks. takes us through the end of the school year.
Board comments, questions at this time? Dr. Settles, I just want to say thank you for your work on this. I know a lot of the things that we talk about are how are our students doing, working at home, and how are our teachers handling the load. Our classified staff are just as essential to the day-to-day operations and, frankly, the support of our young people. And so I'm glad that you were able to not only keep track of the constant changes, both at the federal level and the state level and the local level, but we're able to do this to accommodate our staff. And so thanks for the work you put into this. And thank you to our classified staff. You mean so much to us, so I'm glad that we were able to find an accommodation that can help them out. It's really nicely done. Thank you, Dr. Settles.
Thank you.
Mr. Lotus, I know that you're chairman of the HR committee, so I appreciate your help on that as well. Other board comments? Ms. Hyman, do we have any public comments at this time? Thank you very much. Seeing no more comments, I would entertain a motion on the employment for classified staff members during the COVID-19 closure.
I will make a motion to approve a return to work agreement from April 6th through May 22nd for classified staff as proposed.
Second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Lotus and a second by Ms. Fisher. I could have a roll call, please.
Dr. Foyer.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Brasco.
Yes.
Mr. Lotus.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, the last item on our action items will be item G, Policy Series 4000 Personnel. Dr. Settles, did you get up too soon?
I did, yes. Well, this was the month that the 4,000 policies were up for review, and we have no recommended changes at this time.
All right, thank you, Dr. Settles. Any board comments? Ms. Hyman, any public comments at this time? No. All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to move forward on Policy Review 4000 Series Personnel.
I guess the motion would be that we're going to acknowledge the review of the Series 4000 board policies, and there were no recommended changes at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
I'll second.
Second. We got a motion by Ms. Fisher and a second by Mr. Zerker. Roll call.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Brasco.
Yes.
Mr. Lotus.
Yes.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
Dr. Foyer.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next up on our items, that concludes our action items. So next up will be Section 4, discussion and information items. First up would be just COVID updates. Ms. Hyman, you are up.
Perfect. So I just want to go through really quick with you what our current state is, what are some of the community support and outreach efforts that we've done, and then Dr. Siri's actually going to talk through the teaching and learning plan and answer any of the questions that you have. Big picture, the top priority, and it continues to be the same, and it's the health and safety of our students, our staff, and our community. I mean, that's our number one priority. Our goal through this whole process was to help families, and by families I mean our students, our parents, as well as our staff that are our families as well, find that balance between what is this new environment of learning at home, and yet they're trying to balance work life and having kids at home and all those sorts of things. So it's really been a focus on that balance for everyone. We are officially closed for the rest of this year. You all know that. A new thing that we did a week ago was we also closed all the playgrounds, all the fields, all the sports areas, and all activities for the remainder of the year as well. The playgrounds was a recommendation from our health department because they're not being sanitized as kids are playing on the swings and the slides and all those sorts of things. There's no one going up there and sanitizing it in between students. And they also appeared to be a gathering place for students. shooting a round of basketball or playing soccer on the field. So all of that, those areas have been closed down for the school district as well as for the cities of La Vista and Papillion as well. Dr. Rickley and several of us continue to meet with the task force. The task force includes all the metro area school districts, as well as the health department directors for Douglas County and Sarpy County. They're super helpful, keeping us up to date on what's the latest things happening in our community. And then there's also a weekly meeting with the commissioner and the governor to keep us informed on what's happening on a statewide perspective and to start to do some of the problem solving of what are the next steps in this whole process. And then we also have that regular ongoing communication with our local health department. I would say Sarah Schramm and Jenny up at the health department have been absolutely phenomenal. They take our calls at all hours of the days and night and answer any of the questions that we have for any of the situations that we're dealing with. I put at the bottom there a quote, and that's the biggest priority, is take care of you and take care of your family. This is a challenging time for everyone, but that's the focus and the approach that we've had with all the decisions that we've been making throughout this process. A little bit about the community support and outreach that we're doing, the food distribution. Mr. Lewis corrected me today. No shocker, he corrected me on math. But we've been serving 2,350 students a week. But when you calculate that out, because every student gets 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches, so it's over 23,000 meals that we're giving out every single week. And when you think about that, now we're in week 4 of that process. That's a lot of food that we're getting out into our community. One of the other big pieces and one of the big challenges, and I think Lucas and our technology department get a ton of credit here, is the computer distribution that we've been doing. We gave 161 seniors laptops. We prioritized seniors and we did those right away. We knew that we couldn't, because seniors needed credits to graduate, and that graduation date's May 10th, so it's sooner than the rest of our students. So we knew there were the priorities. And then once all the seniors were taken care of, we also moved to the pre-K actually and through 11th graders. And the priority there is 1 device per household. We wanted all the seniors to have a device and make sure that they were taken care of, but now it's 1 device per household. So we're trying to make sure that at least every household has a device to facilitate some of that online learning as we go into that. And currently, and he gave me these numbers this morning, and I know he was late for a meeting today because he was doing 5 more distributions. So those numbers are growing daily as to the number of devices that we're giving out to all of those students to make sure they have access. The internet access has been a little bit of a challenge, but I know Mr. Bingham had done a ton of problem solving and has been giving hotspots to our seniors, so internet is not a barrier in their online learning as well. And that process will continue. We just sent out another message tonight to families that said, if you don't have a device and you need access to that, to contact your building principal. The principals then screen and get those names directly to Mr. Bingham. And then Dr. Rickley also talked about the outreach that we did through the CHI donation. They said, we have a need, and our community, our parents, our principals immediately rallied and made those donations. Graduation is probably the biggest thing that we get questions about. Probably is true with all of you as well. And Dr. Rickley talked a little bit. Virtual graduation we know we are doing on May 10th. And that's going to be 1 o'clock for Monarchs and 5 o'clock for South. We know that we're going to premiere that on Facebook Live. We are also working on other alternatives to make sure that every single family that has a senior has access to that. So we're working with some local TV stations, we're working with cable stations, we're looking at a lot of different alternatives to make sure that every family is able to access that feature, even if they don't have internet necessarily or Facebook Live in their home. And then we had a July 10th date for the actual ceremony, if we were allowed to do that. For graduation, we felt that that was really important, that we needed to provide our seniors with an alternate ceremony. We're not sure July 10th is going to work, so we're also looking at an August date for that graduation ceremony, because we just feel like that's a really important milestone in the lives of our seniors and something that we need to do. We're also doing an honors night presentation. We talked about that this week. Mr. Kleina and Mr. Johnson have worked really hard to make sure that our seniors, though it looks different, that they're still getting all those opportunities that seniors would have if we weren't in this current situation. So we're also doing an honors night presentation to make sure that we're recognizing all of those scholarship recipients as well. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Siri, who's going to talk about our teaching and learning.
All right, good evening, Board of Education. So just to kind of update you, as I know, because it's been mentioned here this evening, we have rolled into our final phase of the teaching and learning adjustments of our remote learning plan. And so today, new learning started for all students in grades PK through 11th, as well as the continuation of our seniors. Our teachers have done a lot of work of making adjustments, along with the help of their instructional coaches and the CIA team. We also identified 3 to 4 vital components from the fourth quarter that would be the focus of the 6 weeks that we have remaining. The idea behind that was what particular components could best be delivered through a remote learning delivery, as well as what are the key crucial components that we felt like students, if they got an exposure to, would help set them up for success for next school year. So we're already starting to look towards the fall and how we help make this adjustment. Also, we really wanted to focus on the balance piece and the equity piece, recognizing that not all students have an adult at home if their parent is working out of the house, or that parent may be working from home. So there was considerations for things that kids could do on their own, as well as review and practice. The paper packets that you've heard about will continue to be available to families, and we did figure out a way to systematize that a little bit better in the sense of utilizing Rubbermaid tubs, who would have thought of it, can be put outside with a lid on it, and then students can have the accessibility to walk to the school and get those, or a family can drop by and pick those up as well. So we're hoping that that makes that a little more available for families. Again, we also wanted to recognize that our special ed teams have done a lot of work continuing to meet the needs of those learners that have IEPs and 504s, knowing that it has to look different and that we serve those students the best we can in this situation, as well as their continuing IEP meetings and communication with those families as well. And again, as Annette pointed out, really, we also want to recognize that our teachers also have their personal kids at home. So it is really a balance, and I think that starting out slow with the practice piece and the review piece allowed families some time to adjust, and at the same time really allowed us to build crucial pieces here that we felt could be delivered the last 6 weeks. Grading is probably the area where we've received a lot of questions from our staff, from our families, from our students. We recognize that this is a muddy area here, and we're trying to do the best that we can. Really, the goal here is to keep kids engaged for the next 6 weeks. We know that this is an unprecedented time for us. We're trying to figure out the best way to serve our kids while at the same time helping set them up for success for the next stage, regardless of what that is. Where we've kind of arrived is the elementary and the middle school currently have an opportunity to make up work from third quarter, perhaps work that was late or perhaps they were absent right before spring break. So we have created a window of opportunity for them to turn in any assignments or make adjustments as need be. But the fourth quarter grades will not continue to run. With that, what we'll do is teachers will finish out report cards for fourth quarter to show that we were indeed in session. They will mark proficiency on those things that were proficient and be allowed to give comments as they would typically at the end of the school year. High school, on the other hand, is a little bit different. It's a little more complicated, obviously, because you have credits. And even though our goal was to keep our seniors on track on their timeline so that they could be done by May 7th, we also recognize that students in grades 9 through 11 are also working towards earning credit for their graduation. If I'm a sophomore in English, that is a requirement for my graduation, and so allowing them to continue with their grades to earn that credit was also important. Teachers will continue to grade for fourth quarter as they typically would. They are, as of today, they are starting to assign assignments, and students will be graded and be given feedback on those assignments. However, how it is different is at the finalization of those grades at the summative end of the quarter, the district will take a no-harm approach, meaning that for the summative or the final grade, we will look at each individual and make sure that no student was penalized for the situation of us currently not being in a typical school setting. We also recognize that we went from 45 days in fourth quarter to the virtual environment, which is balanced, and so it's a much more restricted contact time with their teacher. As far as the logistics of what that looks like, Leah Gens, who works in our technology department, is done some amazing heavy lifting trying to figure this out, and those pieces are still coming together. But we do know that there will be a lot of consideration put into that final grade for our students. As far as the elementary and middle school, the teachers will continue to provide feedback on things that they assign, again, trying to keep kids engaged, but grades specific going into the grade book will not be a consideration at this point. The last thing is all students then will have an opportunity to correct their third quarter grades, and that's also for the high school as well. We open it up till April 17th for them to be able to make adjustments as necessary. This slide really is commends the work that Annette Iman and her team have done. She tried to be super strategic. We recognize, as Brian pointed out earlier, there's a lot of communication coming out, and if you're a family that has multiple students in multiple buildings, it can be a little overwhelming. And so this was the communication schedule that her team put together. And as you know, those of you that have children in the district currently, on Friday, you're getting your first initial communication from your teachers. It's a week at a glance. We were strategic in that, and we recognize that families need to maybe formulate schedules around working from home or device access, or even just the logistics of where students are going to be completing their work. So having that out Friday so that the family has the weekend to kind of build their schedule for the week, we thought was imperative. Sunday, the district communication will be coming out. It's come out the last few Sundays. Yesterday, of course, it did not because of the holiday. But district communication comes out on Sundays, kind of big picture, and that will include the district decisions that are being made as we continue to move forward through this. As far as Tuesday through Friday will be staff communication, teacher communication, and Monday will be building communication. So the newsletters, any additional communication from the principal, so that families kind of have a rough idea of when they should expect communication from different levels. We did ask our certified staff, our teachers, to try to respond to emails within a 24-hour window, recognizing that Friday after 3 o'clock, they also need to have a break to re-energize and the weekend. And then we communicated with families not to expect it before Monday at 3 to allow them to get their week started. A lot of instructions rolling out on Monday and so on. So again, just trying to be transparent and really giving families expectations of when they can expect to see what from whom. And I believe that concludes the update on COVID-19. Questions from the board?
Thank you, both Katie and Ms. Siri. I do have a question or a comment, and I don't necessarily need an answer this moment, but I think it's important that we reflect on what's working well, even during this process. I'm not asking to try to put more on your plate. However, before school is out, I think it's important we generate some sort of survey or feedback from our parents, our teachers, our students, much like a census, if you will, because this may happen again next year. It may not happen for 10 years. I know when we do bond issues, we go back to all the things that have worked well with the communications and mechanisms and tools to regenerate those. But if we're going to have an educational continuity plan, I think while it's fresh in our minds, I think it's important to visit that, because the ramifications down the road about how we look at software contracts, bandwidth, availability issues, hardware, platforms for teachers, what worked for our students, what didn't work for our students, what we need to arm our teachers with for these things, while it's fresh in our mind. I know we're 3 weeks in, so we're beginning to develop work from home habits, both teachers and students, and so I know we've got 6 more weeks to go, but I'm not for sure what that looks like. We've never been here before, so I think it's important that we document this, because once school's out, it's really hard to get that mind share from some of our folks, so that way we've got a toolkit, if you will. So if this happens again, it could happen in 10 years from now and none of us are here on the board any longer. You never know. That's important to get that documented somewhere. That would be my feedback. I'm thoroughly impressed what we've done with a short order and as much as we had to do, but I think it's important to get that documented. That's my comment and thoughts. I mean, other board members, feedback?
Yeah, to build on your point, the future is online education for a lot of institutions, not so much high school, but there's going to be an element of that in the future. So this is a good way to test, like you say, what works, what doesn't, and I think, good things sometimes happen out of bad things. This is the good thing. So that respect, moving forward, I think we can learn a lot. So that would be great as far as having a summary on what did work and what doesn't.
Thank you, Mr. Zerker.
I appreciate the comment, Mr. Brassfield, and I think even in the few short weeks that we've been rolling out our teaching and learning plan, it's gotten a little bit stronger each week. I would extend that observation to the food program as well. We started out a little bit rocky in week 1. We took some lumps. We learned our lesson. We rolled out a better product in week 2, 3, and 4. So we'll certainly use this opportunity over the summer months to reflect. Now, whether that's a formal survey or whether that's focus groups, again, we want to be mindful of social distancing. But I think that's one of the things I'm really proud of this district, is that we don't get it perfect in our first try, but we've got really smart people that figure things out in a hurry. Our goal, to be clear with our community, is to open our doors to our students on August 11th, our first day of school. We're all chomping at the bit to get our kids back. But to your point, I think we need to have a plan, both short-term and long-term. What did work through all of this, and what could have we done even better, so that when that next situation, not if, but when that next situation arises, how can we be better armed to deal with it? So I appreciate the comment.
Well, I know in the industry I'm in, a lot of people we call this a once-in-a-lifetime event, but I have some of my clients, this is a twice-in-a-lifetime. They were shut down for flooding last year. They were school districts that were along riverfronts, and they had severe flooding. Columbus, for example, was isolated. and now it happened again. So the once in a lifetime thing has happened twice in the same year for a lot of folks. So I think it's important we need to make sure to address that. So I appreciate that, Dr. Rickley. Other comments?
I think kudos to everybody. The work that everybody's been doing is just amazing. Nothing like being slapped with something that you really aren't prepared for and coming up with a plan quickly and making it work. But I think one of the things that I've been thinking about, the more information we can gather wherever it comes from, the more important that is going to be for us, because I'm thinking about local, state, national conferences that will be coming up at all different levels, whether it's board or whether it's teacher-driven or whatever. This is going to be a hot topic, and the more information we have and the more that we can contribute to those conversations, I think that's going to be really important as we move forward. So just that collection of information, being able to do that, because I can see some topics coming forward as we move forward, on through this. I wanted to just say something about the playgrounds, fields, and things. I think let's all keep our fingers crossed and hope that sometime this summer we can open all that back up, because it's going to be extremely important to our neighborhoods, to our children, to the community to be able to get back to some of those things. So let's hope that that is sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Other board comments at this time?
I just have one quick addition to that. I'm assuming it's probably already on the drawing board, but just coming up, now as hopefully we settle into the final phase of the online learning is, what are our contingency plans for again the fall or next spring? As in, what is our plan if we've got a 2-week closure? Just a short term, hey, let's get quick back to social distancing. We had a flare up in the community, and as we've seen, schools just with the regular influenza have to shut down for a week or two and just do a deep clean. Just what our contingency plans are for a short term closure, or again a month long or longer closure. So I know you're probably already working on those. I know we're just doing a lot of contingency planning and coming up with our playbook going forward in my offices as well. So
yeah, we like Dr. Rickley mentioned, we recognize our strongest asset in teaching and learning are our teachers. Getting students in front of teachers is a game changer. And so we were very strategic when we selected those 3 to 4 curricular components for each of the areas. But we've already started the conversation of what does the fall look like? What do we need to circle back around and pick up curriculum-wise to set our students up for success? And then what's reasonable for our teachers? We recognize that there will be a lot of heavy lifting this summer from the curriculum team, but then also turning that piece around and making sure our teachers have the right resources. Because if I am typically a 4th grade teacher, I am going to be heavily involved with the 3rd grade teacher to help deliver this 25% that had to look different. So yeah, we've already started those conversations. It'll look different for a while for us.
no, thank you, much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone. Next up on our discussion items would be item B, Cognia Advanced Ed Summary.
Okay, so thank you again. As Dr. Rickley shared in his superintendent report, and as several of you were involved, the first week of March, we did have our accreditation visit from Advanced Ed / Cognia. They're going through a brand name change. So I tried to hyphen or slash everywhere I could. We did start this when it was Advanced Ed, and now they're morphing to a new name. So that's kind of why you're going to see that. Earlier this week, we finally got our final report, and so tonight I wanted to capture some of the highlights of that for you. I did place, before we started, a paper copy of the final report for each of you to have, for you to take with you and browse at your leisure. So just to kind of refresh or recap the actual visit, it did happen March 1st through the 4th. We had a 6-member team, of which were both made up of in-state and out-of-state. Dr. Melanie Mueller, who's pictured here with part of our team, did a lot of the work and organization of this particular visit. When the team was here, they did 55 classroom observations in 7 buildings. They also conducted 225 interviews. Those interviews included community partners, parents, administration, teachers, CO staff, student council, and a few of the board members with us here tonight. That is the information that they used to gather, along with a whole repertoire of evidence that was put together, and they used 31 standards that they identify to reach a score on how they feel that we are performing as a school district. The 3 domains of the standards, to refresh your memory, focused around leadership, learning capacity, and resource capacity. Overall, a summary of the results. Of the 31 standards, 21 of them we scored on the high impact. That's the highest level. It's basically on a 4-point scale. High impact would be a 4. 9 of those standards we did score on improving, which would be equal to like a 3. And 1 of the standards we received an initiating, which is a 2. Insufficient is a 1, and we received none of those. We got no required actions, which basically Cognia is actually moving away from the required action part of it, but that would be if you received an area of concern or an insufficient score. Basically, Advanced Ed or Cognia now gives a district what they call an IEQ, which is an index of education quality score. It's out of 400, and we received 345.81. It's very high. It's high above the national average. So again, kudos to our teachers and to our administrators that are doing the work with our students. Of the 55 classroom observations, just a couple of things that they captured. Strong areas of things that they noticed in our classroom was they noticed what a supportive learning environment we had and what a well-managed environment we had. And you'll notice in the narrative on the report there's a lot of reference to our instructional model, which is Marzano, which the district implemented 4 years ago, and they saw lots and lots of components with it. So that's really reassuring that we're getting that across the district. As far as the lowest areas on the classroom observation, a high expectation for the environment for all was one of the areas that they identified, and then the digital learning environment, which our lead facilitator shared with us, that's on every visit they ever do. And that partially is because the way that the observation works is they go in for 20 minutes. It's not at the beginning. It could be at the beginning, it could be in the middle, it could be at the end, but it's literally a 20-minute dipstick in, and so it's always hard, and it's based on the students, not the teacher. So it's not what the teacher's doing, it's what the students are doing. The overall results, and these are basically right from the exit report slides that they shared with us at the end of the visit. The general findings they noted were there on the left-hand side, that we have a strong community engagement and support. We have systematic and intentional approach to continuous improvement. We got lots of good feedback on our new SIP MTSS model and the rubrics that are being used to deliver our continuous improvement process. They also noted that we have effective operational processes and procedures, effective curriculum and instruction processes and procedures, and 2 areas that they thought that we wanted to continue to work on was the social and emotional learning component for our students, as well as enhancing academic rigor. Other opportunities, these were just things that were noted as positives and areas that we could grow. We have consistent policy implementation from school to school. They did see that that's a struggle to balance the district oversight with school autonomy. It's hard to give the school autonomy and yet still have the district consistency. Resource allocation for non-district sources, and that was really, you'll notice in the narrative pieces that start on page 10, it's a lot of conversation about the growth that we are experiencing in our district. And then the last piece is a data warehouse. Basically, the report, as Dr. Rickley mentioned, is very helpful. It's very positive. We have a lot of great people in our district doing a lot of work, including yourselves, that are making a difference for our students. I was super excited because, as you know, this will be one component of data for our strategic planning process, and there are a lot of similarities in what they noticed as well as what came out of the first part of the strategic plan. So it's going to fit nicely into it, and so the next steps will actually continue on with the strategic plan, and the advanced ed suggestions will go right into that as part of the process. Questions that you have about that? All right.
Thank you for that update, Ms. Siri. I will say this. You have been one busy person because we started with strategic planning, Cognia Advanced Ed Visit. I know that there were a few of us there. Ms. Witt was there for that. And little would we have known that with this massive initiative, just this, oh, and by the way, you've got to roll out an educational learning plan, virtual education learning plan, basically all in the same month. So job well done.
Thank you.
And I really, really appreciate that. I look forward to diving into the report and seeing more data, but thank you very much. You've done an excellent job.
I have a great team. I will tell you that I thought this year the focus, a lot of my energy would be for strategic plan and advanced ed and not viruses, malware, pandemic.
Well, yes. I remember meeting with you when you were rolling out stuff and doing the visit, and that was a lot.
Yes.
I remember being like, I got a lot going on this week, and I'm like, and now, in the grand scheme of things, that was just an appetizer.
Everybody needs a reality check, right?
Any other board comments at this time?
No, just a big thank you to all involved, your team, the communications team, the staff, the students, everybody. Having seen this done just at the accounting department level at a university, the amount of data and documentation that's required to go through an accreditation is incomprehensible. I mean, it was amazing just to see a small university department go through it, let alone an entire district. So thank you to your team and all the administrators, staff across the district to take time out of their day and time at night to prepare the required documentations so we could get thorough results. A huge undertaking, so thank you.
Any other board comments? Well, seeing none, our next item 5 will be future board calendar, and I can tell you this is pretty limited. It will be the next board meeting. 2 weeks from tonight, April 27th, Board of Education meeting, April 6th. Seeing no more business before this board, we will be considered adjourned at 7:18 p.m. Thank you, everyone.